Hi, welcome. My name is Dale McCluskey, and on this video I want to take a few minutes to discuss the issue of remote collars. Now here I have a remote collar, and I do use, just so people understand, I do use remote collars, but as a secondary tool. They're not a primary tool within this relational system, and I'm going to spend a few minutes to discuss why. It's all about how change is defined in and through the dog owner themselves, what represents change, how it's promoted, how it's defined, and how that sets up change with how a dog's decision-making process is governed and influenced at the social relational level. That's a really key point to understand when you use any device to promote change or to pivot off of as a trainer or dog owner. Now, here, one of the issues here with this type of device is, so people understand, it's really what trainers are really doing and dog owners is using it as a type of go-between, as a way to get some quick results, to start to have the dog respond for them, and start to even build this picture of change through the mainstream picture with the sit down, come and stay. However, one of the things about dogs to understand is that dogs actually know the real deal. They share a very deep and very profound connection with us through nature, to the pack relationship. So they're able to really get a sense as to whether or not we're really reconciling our feelings, our emotions, how we're thinking, or whether or not we're kind of holding on to that way of thinking, and we're merely trying to kind of lean on a device to do the work for us. And that presents a problem in several ways, and one of those is a stress load on the dog. What will happen is dogs actually do connect these relational dots, including to remote collars, and then connect that dot to the person. So here, when you're using something that manifests influence, okay, because that's what we're talking about here, is influence, the dog knows whether or not it's actually lining up to the person themselves, whether or not the person's changing, or whether or not there's a disconnect here, and that the person isn't really changing at all. And this is where you get into an issue of a stress load coming on the dog. The thing to understand, dogs that are holding power in the relationship are already stressed out. They're already holding power, therefore there's already a stress load on the dog from the relationship, from having the lead role in the relationship. So when you're use a device such as this as a primary tool, and you're pivoting off a tool such as this, the problem is that oftentimes, again, the person is not promoting change properly. It's not really encouraging the person to change how they think. And the best way to do that, I'll get into that in a minute, but therefore what happens is the dog begins to look at the device. That's where you get into this issue of device awareness. The dog connects the device and sits and looks at the device as well. It's the device. So therefore what happens there again, and you'll see this happen a lot, is the dog seems better when the device is on than when it's off. And as soon as the device is off the dog, again, you feel like you're back to square one when the device is on. So therefore what happens is you merely just start leaving this device on the dog a lot. But again, you get into this whole issue again of the person's not changing. And again, this whole issue of stress on the dog, it just builds up a problem. So really, you're not fixing a problem. You're just, you're just managing a problem, or you're controlling a problem. It's not really fixing the problem itself. So, so getting back to what is the best device or best tool to use to promote change, this is where I talk about, really define, what is training itself. You get into this issue about devices and about training itself. It's understanding that dog training is a relational changing process. It's all about the relationship. So it's really important to understand that dogs know the real deal. They actually know whether or not the person is coming in the right relationship at the social relational level through leadership. And they also understand that they know how the change is being promoted, whether or not real change is happening. There's real depth to it. So therefore, getting back to the tools, what I use, I strip everything away, and I merely get down to just a leash and a flat collar to make sure everything is lining up. It's all about integrity of the method, integrity of the script to promote change. So for example, if the person, and you see in a lot of my videos, the person is bringing influence onto the dog through bringing the dog into position by pushing. I talk about physical force, not meant to be harmful or hurtful to the dog. It's about what's reasonable. So the context of physical force, to define it, it's about what's reasonable. And again, this whole thing about change, it's about understanding the dog through nature. A dog actually understands the process, okay? It makes sense to them. So, you know, the motivator, and this is something I'll talk about in some other videos. I've talked about it, you'll find some videos on my website. I am talking about this issue. But, you know, you look at people looking for a motivation, a way to motivate the dog into, again, about the picture, right? But again, what happened is people are not looking at motives. The motives may not clean up. The motives of the dog may be rotten to the core, even though they're moving around into these positions, because they're saying, well, what's in it for them? Okay, they're devaluing, they're continuing to devalue. So it's really important to strip everything away. You want to get down to just a leash and a flat collar and hold true to the script. And you'll see my relational scripting process, how I'm using those tools to communicate with the dog to make sure change sets up. But again, here's the thing about remote collars. I do use remote collars, but they're a secondary tool. I don't use them as a primary tool because of how the script is intended to line up and promote change in and through the person. This may interfere in that process, because what happens is typically, even though it can produce quick results in some situations for people, when it doesn't cover off properly. And I talk about covering off, and again, I'll talk about this more in some other videos. I don't put too much information out here all at once, but when you talk about covering off, it means that you can deal with some dogs that are holding a tremendous amount of power, aggressive dogs. It means it may not create the type of change in and through the person to get that dog back from the edge. Again, it's like gapping, okay, where there's gaps in the script. It means the dog knows the real deal. And so someone can still get bitten, even though it looks like, you know, the dog's responding when this collar's on. It does not mean the dog is in the right relationship at all. You're still into a control management situation. So anyway, just want to talk about a minute about the remote collar. There is some depth here. There's some twists and turns, just so people understand. And I'm going to put out some videos to help people navigate some of these twists and turns, just so people understand when things work out or when they don't work out. It's really important to understand why. I really would encourage people not to pivot off these devices the way that the mainstream kind of wants to, you know, center themselves on these, because again, it's all about getting down to this issue about how change is promoted in and through the dog owner themselves. For example, I could use this device, get away with using even using treats, and I'll talk about this in some other videos, get away with it based on how I think currently, how I, you know, what my personality type represents. Whereas, you know, 98% of the people coming to me are not going to be so lucky. The motives of the dog aren't going to clean up based on what those ideas, what those devices represent with promoting change in and through that individual themselves. So anyway, just something to think about. Thanks for watching. Hope you have a great day.